Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Conscious Approach to Stress and Anxiety. I'm your host, Becky, and you can find me on Instagram at Emotional Health School. I would love it if you slid into my DMs as a listener. That is at Emotional Health School on Instagram. And for those of you that are freaking out at the thought of having to send me a message on Instagram, well, this episode is perfect for you. Because today we will be answering the question, how do I step into my courage to make a decision, to take action if I'm feeling anxious? And if we've not met before, like I mentioned, my name is Becky and I'm a stress and anxiety coach, and I use conscious healing methods to help you live a life where you don't feel like you need a break. You don't feel like you need to go constantly to your yoga mat or make any big changes or open a vortex of suppressed emotional past, because really, I give people the skills to let go of their emotional patterns, to surrender them, to change them within the moment of trigger. And yes, we do go deep, but we also give you the tools to unlearn what no longer serves you. So it can be done from a place that feels very safe for you. Because at some point in this journey, which we call life, we have learned all of these different emotional patterns and reactions. And the great thing about that means that we can harness our superpower to unlearn these emotional patterns so that you can feel genuine fulfillment and inner peace exactly where you are, my love. So now, in a place within my program, we mainly work from your beautiful subconscious. We work with different vibrations that you carry within this space. And what this means is different emotional patterns. And one of those vibrations is, drum roll, please, fear. So in today's episode, we will dive deeper into what all of this means. But I really believe that you should not be living a life where fear or anxiety is making decisions for you, which is why this conversation is so important, because it can be really difficult for us to see when this pattern of making fear-based decisions is so buried within our subconscious. And when we are doing this, we are investing so much of our life force energy in coping with these feelings. So hopefully today's episode, really sheds some light if you are in fact subconsciously making decisions out of fear. And most importantly, how to step into your courage and how to step into that best version of you, and how to start redirecting your energy for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones. Now, today's episode was really inspired by one of my beautiful clients, and we initially connected on Instagram where she felt high levels of anxiety, and there were one or two occasions where we nearly didn't speak to one another, as essentially she was carrying that vibration of fear, of anxiety, and this was feeding a story that almost stopped us from working together, which was, out of all of my followers, not that I'm a big time superstar on Instagram by any means, but out of my followers, why was I speaking to her? And when we had our initial meeting before the program began, there was, of course, a lot of fear there, including when we spoke about price. But, she moved past that one very quickly because she recognized that she would spend that investment on a very small part of a house improvement. And if she was spending that on her house, on her material items, why would she not spend that on her vessel for life, on her body, how she feels on the inside, on her emotional health, which is arguably more important? So anyway, she pushed past that fear, she pushed past that discomfort, and she really felt the difference between her intuition and her fear, which is why I have so much respect for this client and why I was so inspired, because she really anchored into her why. She wanted to be there for her kids. She wanted to be there for her husband. And she really recognized how much energy she was wasting trying to cope. And she was committed to realigning, to reinvesting that energy into something more positive. So anyway, she joined my 6 weeks to Inner Peace one-to-one program. We had our first call last week. And on the call, she shared how much fear she was in before, but how grateful and thankful she was to be able to step into her courage, because now she knows she has support. She knows she's on the path. And even within that first week, she said that was worth the entire investment just from how much lighter she was feeling. So I wanted to help more people step into this courage in whatever decision you have to make in life, because ultimately we need to make a decision to change. We need to change. And it's moments like this that I value so much, where the process enables people to step into that power to make that change. So yeah, that's who this episode was inspired by. And if this episode resonates with you, please do not hesitate to DM me. Maybe you could step into that courage today after listening if that scares you, but please DM me the words podcast anxious decision, just so I know exactly what episode you've listened to. So that is podcast anxious decision. I would love to connect with you. I'd love to hear your stories. I would love to hear your feedback to see if there is any way in which I can support you, because connection is a really huge value of mine. So let's chat. And without further ado, grab your cup of tea, grab your cacao, sink into whatever you're doing, and let's dive into this episode today. So I wanted to start by ironing something out around the interchangeable language I will be using in this episode, because I will be using words like fear and anxiety interchangeably for a very intentional reason. What that reason is in emotional healing, we carry a vibration at all times. We as humans are vibrating like a radio. We're vibrating like we're trying to tune into a station. So if we're vibrating at a low emotional frequency, we will receive low emotional frequency thoughts and feelings back. So within my teachings, your vibration is really simply fixed and determined by your emotions. And your emotions, it's likely we're not always aware of, right? Whether this is shame, fear, guilt, apathy, love, joy, we are all carrying something at any given point. And when we then hold a microscope at the vibrational fear specifically, there are so many different feelings within this level. So when we say fear, anxiety, uncertain, paranoid, skeptical, we're really looking at the same energy, the same vibration, but in different shapes, the same emotion, but in different shapes. And we can really uncomplicate it here and understand firstly that all of these feelings that I just mentioned carry the vibration of fear. All of these feelings like paranoid, anxious, skeptical, they're all rooted in fear, just in different shapes and forms. And I really like to clear that up, because as soon as we understand this, as soon as we understand which feelings carry the same vibration, the same umbrella emotion, it really helps us to move past them in their clearest form, because we understand that they're the same vibration. Like, I personally wouldn't say that I have identified as fitting in the box as someone who has anxiety, but I would say that I have felt anxiety. I have felt a lot of fear in varying degrees throughout my life. So, why is it important to care about our vibration? Isn't our vibe something that the hippies just talk about? Because I used to hear that all the time and get so confused. So here's the reality. It's so, so, so important to be aware of our vibration because ultimately it entirely influences all of our feelings, all of our thoughts that are sent to our marvelous brains, all of the stories that we tell ourselves on repeat, all of our behaviors, all of our decisions. If, for example, you're getting thoughts where you're scared to have a conversation with someone, this thought is sent to you and manifested because you are carrying the energy and the vibration of fear. And you'll likely go into overthinking and you will likely persuade yourself out of the conversation and self-sabotage and never have the conversation anyway because the situation and the fear can get so overwhelming. But what we're really talking about here is identifying that energy, that fear, that vibration right at the core and removing it so that you can make decisions that are aligned with your best self and not your most fearful self. So I guess just to summarize, we're always carrying around some sort of emotional vibration, whether it's in your awareness or not. And this is driving all of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And this is really helpful for us, when we get attached to our thoughts being ours, but really when we can look at them as they're not ours, they're being sent to us because of the emotional energy that we're carrying, it really helps us to start to detach from them and not get so sucked in by them. So here's a few examples from my life where I have felt the fear, but I've just gone ahead and done it anyway because I've recognized that that was fear. So number one is around having my voice heard on social media, whether it's creating this podcast or talking on social media. There is or was this constant fear program that ran around in my head, which I believe is rooted in, some of these phrases around children should be seen and not heard. Not that I'm a child, but because I carry that fear, that program, and it impacts all of my decisions. It impacts what I'm doing. And it led me for a very long time down a path of not feeling heard because I was too scared to even speak my voice. And when I started speaking on social media, it freaked me out. When I thought about having to tell my story on this podcast in episode 1, freak out. The fear was just sent to me. And all of these stories started running in my head. What if I offend someone? What if I annoy someone? What if no one likes me? But when I was able to identify that those thoughts were really coming from the vibration of fear, I could quite clearly step into my courage to speak because I know on a deep soul level that sharing our stories helps. I know on a deep level that this could reach someone like you and you may get a single bit of nugget of information. And if you don't like anything else that I say, if you don't like me, then that's absolutely fine because I've let go of that fear of not being liked because I can root in my mission of wanting to help people and anchor in that intention and letting go of the fear helps me clearly identify that and step into the right decision. And it now means that I'm not limiting myself from doing something good, for myself, the world, for other people. And yeah, being able to let go of that fear vibration and move that energy is so empowering. Another thing that I've been scared of, and another example that I wanted to talk about today is money. There's so much fear around money, about having those precious numbers in the bank account and worrying about the day that will never come. And worry is another word that I use interchangeably with the word fear. So for me, the first investment that I made in myself caused so much discomfort. And it was double scary because I was in a space in my life where I was selling my house. I had quit my job, therefore, I had no income to pay for the mortgage. And if you live in the UK, you will know that there is very little certainty when you are selling a house, and so often the buyer can pull out. But because I let go of that fear and I stepped into my courage and I trusted the universe, that has meant that I can really create the life of my dreams and step into this version of myself that I am meant to be, that version of myself that I knew that I was meant to become. And if I told that version of myself that I'd spent 15K on mentorships at this point in time in the future, I think she would have flipped her lid because that version of me wasn't good at letting go of fear. But I had to take that one step to be held on the other side and shown that it's not that scary. It's not that scary. The scariest part is making the decision, but when you can move through that and really learn how to navigate your emotions, then there's no more fear in the future, and you can step into these scary steps to become the version of you that you're meant to be. So the next question I usually get asked is, well, how do I identify fear? And that's a bloody good question. You may not obviously be feeling all of these feelings in a way that you are aware, because usually we get these thoughts from our subconscious, and these are out of our awareness. And usually, I said it before and I'll say it again, we are spending so much of our precious life force energy into understanding and worrying about if things are the right decisions or not. And the way that I look to identify it is by looking at if you are making a decision from fear and anxiety, or if you're making it from intuition and courage. Now, get ready, because I feel like this information about the difference between intuition and fear is so important. So when we're in fear and anxiety, we feel this sense of urgency. We feel this panic and we feel this overwhelm, and we can fall into that overthinking, the racing thoughts, and our entire being just gets completely taken over by that fear. And you will know, if you've been here, you start creating all of these hypothetical situations about what could go wrong. And the likelihood is that none of these hypothetical situations are actually going to come to fruition. But like I say, we spend our energy replaying them over and over in our head. And the best way for me to say to think about fear is to ask if it's asking you to run away from potential pain. When you're acting out of fear, when you're making a decision out of fear, you are constricting into that smaller version of yourself. On the flip side, how can you follow your intuition? Because when you follow your intuition, you can step into your courage, which is another vibrational energy that we can lead with, by the way. Courage. Courage and intuition, it's so much more subtle. Your intuition doesn't need to be loud. Your intuition has a knowingness that shouldn't need to persuade you. And unfortunately, I've experienced this, and I'm sure you may have experienced this, but the older we get, the more fear programmed we become, the more we lose the ability to listen to our intuition, because our intuition, it's calm, it's gentle, and it knows of some caution, but it doesn't provide all of that mental chatter, and it allows you to expand into the best possible version that you want to become, whilst knowing that if something did go wrong, you will always be okay. Your intuition allows you to expand and grow and make mistakes. And it's a simple knowingness that you are human, you are here to make mistakes. That is part of our experience, people. That's why we're here. And we're here to make mistakes and we're here to learn from them. When we can step into our intuition, like I said, we can also step into our courage. And when we look at making mistakes, true courage is about accepting that mistakes are part of life. And yes, sometimes things may not go as we expect them, but we will learn from them and it will take us down a path where we are meant to go. True courage says, I will not be a victim. I will not shrink into my smallness, and I create my own reality, and I will put myself in the best possible position to take responsibility and to create a new reality, because no one's going to give us permission. It's down to us to tap into our intuition and to take action, and knowing that our fear will always keep us in a familiar hell rather than sending us to a new heaven. And there's no shame in this. Like, it's literally how our brain is wired, is to run away from pain rather than towards pleasure. But when we understand this, it is really helpful to step into our courage. And into my 6 weeks to inner peace program, we're teaching you how to move through this energy, because it's not a villain. The fear is just trying to keep us safe. So when we can come within harmony with that and within acceptance that fear is okay to have, we have a problem when we start to villainize our fear and our anxiety, because we create this internal war with our head and our heart. When we try and resist fear and anxiety, it persists. And, when we can see fear simply as a vibrational frequency, emotional frequency, we can see that 99% of the time in reality, it's not always a question of safety. But it's our job to be able to understand and push past a little bit of discomfort, to step into our higher and most empowered self, to step into that vibration of courage, because it feels so good. It feels so good to step into our courage, and it feels so good on the other side. And when you can move past that little bit of discomfort and tap into your intuition, step into your courage, with that decision, if you can be held on the other side, or if you can follow your trust to then learn from what is in on that other side, and not let that fear that shouts so loudly dictate your decisions, that is where we will find the best version of ourselves. Anyway, that is my little pep talk on fear versus intuition. Another thing that we can really do when looking at if fear is making our decisions for us is to really take the pressure off, guys. There's no such thing as a perfect decision. And there is no one decision that will fix your life forever. There is no magic pill. But what there is this ability to, like I say, step into our courage, but also our rational mind, to logically see that your path, your patterns, what you may be doing right now could be driving you down a path that gets you not to the version that you want to be. And if that path isn't taking you where you want to be, what if you take a different path? What if that path just doesn't get you exactly to your destination? And it might be slightly windy, but if you take one step into that direction, are you likely to feel 5% better? If you carry on down this road, what you're currently doing today, will you be happy? And if you can look back and say that you're happy with your emotional patterns, then this is fab. And I am thrilled and genuinely so happy for you. But clearly seeing that if we are the type of person that wants to break our patterns, then it's likely that you're listening to this podcast for a reason. You know, is the problem going to magically solve itself? Are these feelings going to go away if you carry down this existing path? And Einstein actually said that the definition of insanity is doing the same things, but expecting different results. And when we do these same things, yes, we may feel temporary relief. And it's so amazing, what you have achieved on your path so far. And I always say this, like, it's so important to look back and look at all of the incredible things that we have done to even get us to this place in the first place. But then also identifying that if we are spending our precious energy coping and managing, then we're not actually healing at the core. And our body never forgets unless we do something about moving that energy, about stepping onto the path that takes us in the right direction, even if that doesn't drop us right at our destination. My point being is, a lot of the time it's really important for you to take the pressure off of making the perfect decision. Take that pressure off of your shoulders and see if you're following your intuition or your fear, and take the pressure off of making the perfect decision and know that you're stepping onto a path that is directionally correct. And that doesn't mean changing your whole life or making drastic changes. If you've listened to my story in the last episode, I learned that when you're changing everything on the outside, the feelings just come back anyway. So the journey we speak about here is an inside job. So it's not about changing your career or changing your relationship, but allowing a lighter and brighter internal world so that you're doing less, you're spending less energy, managing emotions, and creating space to feel happier, making more space for abundance, making space for that love to flood in. And naturally, the universe does its magic and it just starts to work in our favor. Okay, so the next important concept I wanted to touch on is the difference between judgment and discernment. And really the key difference here, and the reason this is so important when we're looking at fear-based decisions, is because judgment is usually driven by fear. So in our society, we are constantly trying to judge, trying to analyze what is safe, what is not, what are all of the different data points I can get to make the best decision. This is all based on how we have been hurt in the past. And the more present fear is, the more we are in judgment. And judgment just completely clouds our vision. It doesn't allow us to make a decision that makes sense. So judgment I see, as a very unpleasant emotion-based approach. And anytime we carry that unpleasant emotion, we actually do not see clearly. We do not see truth. We cannot see what is really best for us in the long term. So when I explain this to people, and you may be thinking this, they often ask, well, if I don't have judgment and I don't have fear, then how do I even know if I'm making the right decision? And I love this question because, when we let go of fear and judgment, our ego and our mind may tell us that the only alternative is to walk around being naive and being in danger. And I'd just like to inform you that, this work isn't about walking around like a happy skipping fairy and being happy all of the time and meditating our way out of the feeling. It's actually quite the opposite. It's about feeling the raw feeling and moving the energy behind it. And once you have done that, then you can actually step into discernment. And discernment is so different to judgment in the way that it's not emotionally charged. Discernment allows us to see truth in situations. Discernment allows us to clearly see what is best for us and to take the right action within the path that is most aligned with our authentic self. Essentially, discernment, I like to think of it as healthy judgment. And it's a really good barometer for the type of decisions we are making to challenge ourselves. Are we in judgment or are we in discernment? So to summarize, judgment is very emotionally charged. It limits us from seeing clearly, where discernment allows us to see truth. And we can tap into our discernment once we can push past that little bit of fear. And sometimes you'll hear people say, never trust anyone. And it's likely the person that's saying that has been driven by fear based on their past. It's likely that the person who says never trust anyone might have lost sight of their intuition to tap in to their healthy discernment, because they may be attached to what they perceive as negative consequences. And they've had these negative consequences and then they've not had the tools to deal with them, which has left this negative impression, which they are then trying to pass on to you. On the other end of the scale, you don't want to trust everyone, right? And just be completely taken advantage of. So the answer is to really be able to identify, is fear present, to be able to let go of that and to tap into your healthy discernment and intuition to clearly see if this is a path where you like the destination, where the destination feels aligned for you. And when you can use your discernment, you can very clearly see that nothing in life is guaranteed. Like if you want to go to Hawaii, you're never guaranteed that the weather's going to be fab. And you're never guaranteed that you're going to have the perfect service. And you're not even guaranteed that you'll make it to the airport. But you know that that end goal of going to Hawaii is something that you want. And you know that you will do everything to get you there. And you know that there will be a professional pilot to help you fly, and there will be the air hostesses. When it makes a decision, when the decision of going to Hawaii is something that's so obviously clear, I think it's really important that when we are coming into making decisions, we understand the destination that we want to get to, whether that's feeling inner peace, whether that is getting to Hawaii, without letting fear attach onto all of the different mechanics of how does the plane work. And I like to use this analogy in all of my decisions because it means that I can clearly understand where I want to go and get clear on my intention. And for me, my intention is always to learn more and become that best version of myself. And can I push past that little bit of fear of driving to the airport and make sure that when I get there in the safest way possible? And, this is what I love about my one-to-one program, 6 Weeks to Inner Peace, because there can be so much fear in the beginning because we're dealing with anxiety here. And, sometimes if you can recognize that pattern and recognize that that thought of anxiety is coming to your mind, is sending you anxious thoughts, and that is limiting you from being the best version of yourself, and make a decision that can help you break that pattern. And in doing that, just push past that initial bit of fear. We are teaching you how to move through that fear. We're teaching you how to move through it for every possible future decision that you need to make. Okay, so to summarize what we've been through today, fear It's always busy. It's always going to give you that mental clutter. It will constrict you and it will create those endless hypothetical situations where your intuition allows you to expand, it allows you to grow, and it just has that quiet knowingness. And how do you step into your courage to make a decision if you're feeling anxious is really helpful to understand your feelings in the clearest form and understand the energy that is driving your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. And also getting really clear on your intention and identifying, you know, what is driving you. Is it intuition or is it fear? Because your intuition will have that quiet knowingness, whereas your fear will be loud and debilitating. The other part of the summary is really about stepping into our courage and taking the pressure off of making the perfect decision, as long as you're heading in the right direction and learning and growing and challenging yourself to not constrict. Also understanding that sometimes when we can move past that little bit of fear, what can be on the other side is what is going to make our life even more beautiful. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Becky, I want to learn how to do all of this. And, this field, the field of healing, emotional healing, really is a mindless sea of information. And you might be thinking, I don't know where to start. Well, my love, I have got you. I've got your back. So if you'd love to connect, I would love to connect with you. You can DM me on Instagram at Emotional Health School and make sure you message me the 3 words podcast anxious decision. There's no pressure. I am super relaxed. And what always makes me laugh is whenever I speak to a potential client, 9 out of 10 times they say, oh, you're so peaceful. And that always makes me laugh because my signature program is called 6 Weeks to Inner Peace. So I'm really glad that I can be a walking example of what I help people with. And it's a really beautiful, a really deeply personalized program in the way that it's very structured and it can guide you at your own pace. And it gives you these practices for life. Healing isn't something that we do in a therapy office. It's not something that we do within your 6 weeks of working with me. You are healing for the rest of your life. And the best thing that you can do is to equip yourselves with the right tools to do that. And with these tools, I've seen relationships improve. I've seen careers improve. I've seen people finding joy in the mundane tasks. I've seen genuine transformations from the inside out. And it's why I'm so passionate about this work. It's why it's a really beautiful journey. And if you're interested to take it, message me. Message me at Emotional Health School on Instagram, the podcast Anxious Decision, those 3 words, podcast Anxious Decision. I don't accept everyone into my program. So it's very important that we align energetically and you are in the right place within your journey. But if you're here just to listen to the content and take all of the value out of these podcasts, then you can just DM me, you can just keep binging this podcast, whichever camp you fall into. I would love to send my gratitude. I would love to send my thank you to you for listening today. And if you've made it this far, it's very likely that you are on the same path. And it's very likely that you are listening to this podcast for a very good reason. And I hope that you got some ideas. I hope that you got some little golden nuggets of information to help you throughout your day, throughout your weeks, throughout your months, because I truly believe that everyone deserves to feel lightness on the inside. So that's me. Love to you all, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.